Roberta Carroll. Born on May the 21st, 1921, in Croydon, Robert Carroll was the son of a famous surgeon and a religious mother. He also had an older sister and a younger brother. Roberta is well known both for being the UK's first trans person to undergo gender reassignment surgery on May the 15th, 1951, some 2 years before Christine Jurgensen in the US, and for her colourful existence previously as a fighter pilot in World War II, where she was shot down and became a prisoner of war until 1945 in North Germany, where the advancing Russian army eventually freed her. She was also a successful motor racing driver, particularly in uphill time trials, which she also returned to successfully after transitioning. After the war, Robert was faced with earning a living, having a wife and 2 children to support. With a business partner and a couple of helpers, he set up a specialist auto engineering company. His thrill for speed and the restarting of motor racing in 1946 encouraged him to enter events in as many different cars as he could, and with this gain experience to design and build his own racing cars. But things were far from well in his personal life. Because of frequent absence during the war and his lost years as a prisoner, his marriage ended in divorce. He became unwell, depressed and moody because of this. He was not a big man to start with and lost more weight, which caused him some concern. Seeking help, he went to see 3 psychiatrists, the last one being a dire, patient but understanding Scot, who finally proved to Robert that he was repressing his feminine side and that the woman in him was very deep-rooted. This was the reverse of what Robert had expected. He reckoned he had a complex fear of losing his masculinity. Perhaps they were both right. One day after a squash match, his opponent observed, "You know, you really ought to wear a bra." This jokey comment actually caused Robert to try to find out just how much of a female he was. A few days later, he consulted a Harley Street sexologist. The sexologist's considered opinion was that Robert had quite prominent female characteristics, and that his latent feminine characteristics were late in developing. He also thought that Robert had a degree of intersex about him too. Further medical examination would need to be done to see how feminine Robert was body-wise. Robert had no wish to become someone of no particular gender or to end up as appearing as an effeminate male. Shortly after, a woman doctor who was a gland specialist took on his case. She had Robert examined by 2 gynecologists, 2 GPs, a professor of anatomy and an endocrinologist. Their conclusion was that they were amazed not that Robert was so feminine, but such a female person could seem outwardly so masculine. They discovered that Robert had an abnormal flow of female hormones in his body. Robert had 2 options, the doctor suggested: to carry on as he was, or to live the rest of his life as a woman if he cared to choose to do so. Robert discounted his personal 3rd option, to end his own life. Although none of the doctors had personal knowledge of gender change from male to female, they had come across female to male gender changes before and had assisted in these changes. They suggested the use of female hormones, breast enhancement surgery, facial surgery and eventually a genital operation that could remove any sexual ambiguity. The treatments were to go on for nearly 2 years. They did not all go smoothly, and the effects varied. Some days Robert was happy at his growing femininity. On others, he barely had the energy to wind his watch. His writing changed so much to the point where the bank manager thought that the cheques had forged signatures. He had to also go on a strict diet because a more feminine fat distribution started making him look quite tubby. His mental processes changed and slowed, although he found they were replaced by new powers of intuition. Roberta was able to change a birth certificate fairly easy in those far-flung days. This was, of course, in the days before the judgment in the Corbett versus Corbett case with April Ashley. which changed trans people's lives until the advent of the Gender Recognition Act in 2004. Roberta also wrote an autobiography entitled Roberta Carroll's Story, which is still available. April Ashley. Born George Jameson on the 25th of April 1935, George grew up with an unhappy childhood in the slum area of Liverpool as one of 6 children of a Roman Catholic father and a Protestant mother. A young George Jameson moved to Paris in the 1950s and joined the cast of the cabaret show at the Carousel Theatre with the famous French entertainer Cochinelle. April had an early gender reassignment procedure in 1960 in Casablanca, Morocco, under Dr. Georges Barrou. She was only the 7th person to receive gender reassignment surgery from Dr. Barrou, and the doctor warned April that the procedure could even result in death. But she pressed ahead with the operation. April says that she bled for several weeks after the surgery and lost large clumps of hair from her head which never grew back. In her first book, The First Lady, April tells the shocking story of the rape she endured while still living as a man. A homosexual roommate viciously raped the young George Jameson, and April suffered much psychological trauma as a result. After returning to England after surgery, April became a successful fashion model, appearing in such publications as Vogue and winning a small role in the film The Road to Hong Kong, which starred Bing Crosby and Bob Hope. Her credit, however, was dropped from the film after she was outed as transsexual by the Sunday People in 1961. She married the Honourable Arthur Corbett in 1963, but the marriage did not last. In 1970, Corbett, later the 3rd Baron Roralan, successfully had the marriage annulled on the grounds that Ashley had been born male, which set the precedent for the legal status of transsexuals in the United Kingdom for years to come. This was set to change in the year 2004 with the Gender Recognition Act, where transsexuals were allowed to change their birth sex to reflect the gender role that they were now in. After a heart attack in London, April retired for some years to the Welsh border town of Hay-on-Wye. Ashley was once great friends with fellow performer and rumoured transsexual Amanda Lear. According to Ashley's book The First Lady, the two women had a major falling out and haven't spoken in years. At one time, Catherine Zeta-Jones was rumoured to be playing the part of Ashley in the film story of her life. April now spends her time living in both London and the south of France, and still does the occasional talk from time to time. Caroline Cossey. Barry Cossey was born on the 31st of August 1954 in Brooke, a village in Norfolk, England. Even through puberty, Cossey was somewhat feminine in appearance due to a condition known as Klinefelter syndrome. He had an unhappy childhood where he suffered confused feelings and bullying due to his femininity. Growing up, Barry's closest companion was his sister Pam. Barry left school when he was 15 and at 16 moved to London. Soon after moving to the city, Barry started transitioning. By the age of 17, Barry had started hormone therapy and was living full-time as Caroline. She began a career as a showgirl at a London nightclub. Despite initial shock, her parents were supportive. After undergoing breast augmentation surgery, she worked hard to save up for gender reassignment surgery. After years of hormonal and psychological treatment under Dr. John Randall and changing her name, she had surgery on the 31st of December 1974 at Charing Cross Hospital in London. After the surgery, Caroline ventured into a career in modelling and an active social life as a woman. She worked hard and dated without revealing her past. Under the name Tula, she appeared in magazines such as the Australian Vogue and worked extensively as a glamour model. She was a page 3 girl for The Sun and appeared in the Playboy magazine in 1981. Caroline won a part in the British game show 321 in 1978. Soon a journalist started contacting Caroline, revealing he had discovered she was transsexual and planned to write a story. Journalists began researching her past and attempted to interview her family. Caroline responded by dropping out of the show. Eventually, the tabloid journalists stopped contacting Caroline and her family. After the incident, Caroline tried to keep a lower profile. In 1981, she was cast as an extra in the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only. Shortly after the film's release in 1982, the News of the World finally revealed that Caroline was transsexual, with a front-page headline reading, "James Bond girl was a boy." The story spread quickly, and by her own accounts, Caroline was so upset by the press coverage, she contemplated suicide. In 1982, Caroline responded by releasing I Am a Woman, her first autobiography. After the furore had died down, she became engaged to Count Glacio Lacinio, an Italian advertising executive, who was the first man who dated her knowing of her history. He encouraged her to petition for change in British law concerning transsexuals in regards to being able to change their birth certificates and to marry. The engagement failed, but the legal process continued for 7 years, eventually reaching the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. In 1985, after breaking up with Lacinio, she met Elias Fattal, a Jewish businessman, who was not aware of her history until proposing marriage on Valentine's Day 1988. Rather than rejecting her, he merely asked if she would convert to Judaism, which she did. They were married on the 21st of May 1989, a few weeks after the European Court of Human Rights handed down their decision to legally recognise Caroline as a female on the 9th of May. They returned home from their honeymoon to find that the News of the World had done a story on their wedding. Fattal's family was horrified and after a few weeks convinced him to annul the marriage. On the 27th of September 1990, the European Court overturned their decision after the British government appealed. Transsexuals born in the UK would have to wait to 2004 and the Gender Recognition Act to be able to change their birth sex to the gender that they present in. In the meantime, Caroline returned to modelling. In 1991, Caroline released My Story, her second autobiography, which told the details of her transition and her unsuccessful battle with the European Commission. She was featured in the September 1991 issue of Playboy in pictorial The Transformation of Tula, this time as an acknowledged transsexual. Caroline married again in 1992 to Canadian David Finch. The couple are still married and are living in Kennesaw, Georgia, just outside Atlanta.
Because I look the way I do doesn't abolish the fact that the emotions inside this grotesque carcass of mine are human and the nerve is right. If I made a